what, it seems smart for me to skip ahead. We've been in low pass mode. I'm going to skip down to paraphonic mode. Now, paraphonic mode allows independent articulation of the two oscillators, which are, if they're in this parallel setting, being sent independently to the two filters and then independently to the two modulators. So you have almost entirely articulated duophonic sound, except for then you get to the amp, of which there is one being controlled by one envelope. So I understand a lot of companies are using paraphonic now to mean not fully independently articulated sounds. And I think that's very convenient, but it's a little bit challenging because previously Paraphonic described a situation that had one filter and one amp. So a lot of synthesizer companies are making synthesizers that I absolutely love, and they're calling this mode Paraphonic mode. But for the purposes of this, basically what we're talking about is a situation where we don't have full amplitude articulation, even if we do have full timbral articulation. So the low note has, now this is where you kind of hear that it's more paraphonic. If you're only holding one note, then the second oscillator is going to go to that note and it's going to sound monophonic. But if you listen to this oscillator going through the first filter, it has its own independent thing going on. And when I press another key, you're going to hear the second oscillator going through the second filter and being modified by only the second modulator. So that is the combination of split and paraphonic mode. You have the ability to really have independent timbral articulation and frequency articulation of each of the oscillators going through two filters and two modulation sources. So yeah, let's go back to low pass and calm down a minute, because holy cow, the possibilities are just, they're out of control, people. So right now what we have going on is we have two oscillators being sent to two different filters controlled by two different modulation sources, but we can play it like a typical synthesizer, and you can hear like the two different filters doing their thing. And part of that is due to the offset. If we make the offset less obvious, it becomes less obvious. And of course, we have another setting here we haven't talked about yet. I wish I could do this linearly. I feel like I'm jumping all over the place, but let's switch this. The 1+2 is serial. We hit one filter, then the next. One filter controlled by one modulation source, and then the next controlled by the next. Having those independently modulating LFO settings creates a lot of interesting outcomes. So let's move on to the VCA setting. Okay, we have this. I'm going to turn the, this is the sound we have right now. Can you hear the filtering? But if we switch this to the VCA setting, the oscillator skip the filter, goes straight to the amp. So they're completely unaffected by the filter. So if you have that situation where I was talking about how there seems to be at least a little bit of resonance that exists in the filter setting, even when the resonance is at 0, you get away from that. You can hear direct oscillator output. Now, half, which I've just switched it to, now this is directing these oscillators to the second filter as controlled by the second modulation source. So let's have a listen to that. This should be 12 decibels per octave. Using modulation source 1 doesn't do anything because right now we're in the half, and that means it's going straight to the second filter, straight to the second modulator. Now remember, during all of this, for clarity, I've been playing monophonic parts, but you can still play duophonic no matter what the setting is. Which is weird because you don't have to be in the paraphonic setting for it to be duophonic. Which just, I mean, it brings my point to light. Like, it's about note count. It's not about articulation. But still, it is kind of confusing. Interesting when you have it in serial mode, even though it's set to the half, it seems like modulator 1 can affect the sound. Okay, so that gives you a bit of a sense about how this routing goes. Now I have just a few more minutes to at least give you a sense of what like the bandpass filter sounds like. So I'm going to switch this to... Okay, let's take off some of this modulation here. Let's set this to normal so we just have it going through the first filter. This is the bandpass filter. Resonance a chord away up. Halfway up. 3/4 the way up. It's really cool. I'm sorry. I had to get musical there for a second. And then all the way up. Let's see if it has self-oscillation. Wow. Let's listen to that on half to see if it's the same thing happens. On the half setting, you're going to get that 12 decibel per octave filter, even with the bandpass setting. So those two settings are going to be different, which gives you even more diversity to mess around with. Let's listen to the high pass filter in 24 decibel per octave mode. Let's turn the resonance down. Let's listen to that in 12 decibel per octave mode. Yeah, a little bit different. Okay. So let's listen to that with some resonance. And more resonance. And more. Let's have the resonance all the way up and see what the self-oscillation sounds like. Wow. Okay, that was a very cool sound. Let's listen to the 12 decibel per octave mode. Is that distorted? Now, if you patch the CV into the filter cutoff, there's a good chance you'll be able to play that really bassy sine wave that we're getting in the 12 decibel per octave version of the high pass filter, allowing you to put a huge, huge low end on the sound when you're using the high pass filter. Oh boy. Okay, so obviously there's a lot of experimentation to do, and I have just scratched the surface, even with everything I just showed you. So this is where the Nyx becomes deceptively complex. It's there's just so much that can be done with it, but that is basically the routing and the filter section.